needs no introduction. $1 million seller, top recruiter.
I mean, we know the fundamentals of recruiting. We know all the tools. We know about how to give out information. So I'm going to just change it up a little bit. We're going to talk about how relationships and how relating ends up getting you recruits. And so I wrote a few notes about this. When you first come into a party, or when you come into an event like this, you know the person in the room that comes up to you and smiles and says hello and breaks the ice, because sometimes it's a little awkward. When I was a really young consultant coming to this kind of thing, it was much different than it is today. When I would walk in a room 16 years ago, I was completely anonymous. No one knew who I was, and no one really cared, I don't think. And, but you know what I mean? So I just encourage you, when you come to these kinds of things, to reach out to that person that seems like kind of a lost soul and make them feel welcome, because it makes all the difference in the world. You need somebody to break the ice. You know, sometimes it's just awkward. So that's the first thing I want to tell you about at a party, is that it's your job to be the meeter, the greeter, the engaging person. So you've got to figure out how to make small talk to make other people feel tall. If you can do that, make other people feel good about their day and themselves, at the end of the party, when you ask them that big question, they are totally on board with you because they know you and like you. So if you've got the white elephant in the room, like the mother-in-law or the husband who's just sitting there didn't help you carry in your crates and stuff, be gracious and say, oh, hi, and I'll just steal the line from Marie, if you always compliment the host, great house, beautiful kids, nice dog. If nothing of this is true, then say, great directions, you've got to thank them for something. So if I ever tell you great directions, you know that, your score is 0 on the whole thing. But the importance of relating at the beginning of your show is so that people will listen to you the rest of your party. You have to set the tone so that people say, yeah, this sounds good. When Mary started to speak last night, she just didn't get right into her talk. I mean, she spent most of last night relating with us, didn't she? I mean, that was her entire purpose last night, was to get to know you and so that we could get to know her, so that today when she comes up, are you not all on board with wanting to hear what she has to say, right? So you need to do that at your parties. Get set up so that the meat of the middle of your party is the recipe, which is, like Marie said, that's just kind of the vehicle. So anyway, at the opening, and then before the show, you are relating to them so that they will listen to you, okay? And then at the end of the party, you want to relate again with them so that they will join your team. So just a few quick things about recruiting. Number one, recruiting is nothing different than selling and talking about and bubbling over about your favorite product or a booking. And I've said this and I've preached this for years and years, but my first 3 years of business, recruiting was always kind of a separate part of my party. If you can just kind of imagine it, I did the selling and I did the booking, but the recruiting was always kind of an add-on thing. And a lot of times it got cut, especially if I ran over. How many of you have ever done that? You just think, these people don't want to hear anything more from me. So you have to make sure that at the end of the party, you've saved enough time for your most important part. And I do not go on and on for 20 or 30 minutes. If you've seen some recruiting games or talks that go on that long, I really do think that's a little long. I think that 10 minutes should be plenty of time because you've already laid the groundwork for recruiting. Now at the end, it's time to just scoop in all your business. You want to scoop in your sales, you're scooping in all your bookings, and now we're going to get the recruits too. But what I want to tell you about the recruiting thing is basically this. If you give them just enough information to get them interested, just like a booking, and I've said this many a time, but you don't tell everybody, oh, have a party, but you know what? I'm going to need you to get these ingredients, and then you've got to clean your house, and you've got to get rid of your husband, and you've got to get rid of those bratty kids, because I really don't want like kids at my show, and you've got to do this and this. And by the time you told them all of that, they would be saying, I'll call you tomorrow. Let me think about it. But what do you say? Instead, oh my gosh, you want to have a party? Great, let's get you on the calendar, and we'll talk about it later, right? You're giving them just enough information. So recruiting is no different. You want to give them enough information so that they're going, yeah, I think I could try that, so that they don't talk themselves out of it. And I think Mary chatted about that last night too. If you give them too much, then they're starting to go, oh, I don't know, I don't think that's for me. So what I suggest is that you give your information in whatever form it's comfortable for you. And then I don't tell a huge story about me, because I might not be relating to everybody in the group. The problem is if you give too specific a story, and you've heard this before, I know you have, but if you give too specific a story, so instead, what you might want to say is ask questions like, how many of you work full-time? You know what, if you work full-time, you are the perfect person for selling Pampered Chef because you've got lots of contacts at work and you already know how to work and you'll be fabulous. How many of you are stay-at-home moms? You'd be perfect Pampered Chef consultants because you might need a fun night out. Do you see what I'm saying? See how I'm doing this? All I'm doing is getting to relate to whatever their situation is so that when I talk about selling Pampered Chef, they're going, yeah, it's for me. It's for everybody, right? So give them enough information, and then always, the last tip I'll give you is always to assume that they want to sign up that night. Do not assume that they need to go home and talk to their husband and ask their mom, who's obviously going to say no, and ask their best friend and do all that kind of jazz. Get them committed that night. There's a lot of people out there that can spend $159 on products. Do you feel guilty about selling, a deep covered baker and a few things? Do you tell them, oh, you better ask your husband if it's okay? No, you just say, oh my gosh, you're going to love it, it's going to be great. You know that the old saying, it's way better to ask forgiveness than to beg for forgiveness than ask permission. You always, I'd rather beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. So see if they're that type of person that will sign up, and you have contracts right with you. And when they're checking out, you say something like, hey, I see that you're thinking about selling Pampered Chef. I am so excited. What do you already have that's in the kit? And you start talking to them just like you do a booking, just like that they are going to do it. There is no difference. If you would just change that one thing about your recruiting, you'll recruit 5 people a month or 8 people or 10. They're going to be coming out your ears. You won't know what to do with them all. Promise you, it will change your way of recruiting forever. So the relating at the beginning and the relating at the end, and in the middle, you do whatever you have to do, set your hair on fire, whatever you got to do, and you will be swimming in recruits. So that's all I got for you. Thanks so much.